Next April, I am planning to attempt to be the first person ever to have swam the entire way around the coast of mainland Britain. And I only learned to swim 3 weeks ago.
Episode 301, Conquering 30 Years of Anxiety Through Adventure with Paula McGuire. You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast, brought to you by 180 Tech. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hello again, friends. Thanks again for listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. And, well, I have a fun show that I think is going to be very beneficial for a lot of us today. I have Paula McGuire from Scotland. And Paula has such an amazing story to tell about how she used adventure to overcome some extreme anxiety issues that were debilitating. And it's given her a new life and so much hope and encouragement and inspiration for so many others. So Paula McGuire is on the phone today, and I'm really excited to hear her story. Paula, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Kurt. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Well, we're excited to hear what you have to share. I know that what you've been doing has been so wonderful, setting the example for so many others on overcoming adversity. And I love shows like this because the reality is, I forget who the artist was, like 20 years ago, who had a song called Equal Scary People. Did you ever hear that?
No, I don't know that one.
Well, the message of the song was exactly that. It was just that everybody has their own challenges. And it's completely normal for people to have challenges. That's what life is. But when someone like yourself comes out and says, hey, this was my particular challenge and this is what worked for me, I think that it helps so many people. So I'm really excited.
Hope so.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. But we got to start with Scotland. So you live in Glasgow.
I do. I live in Glasgow, in Scotland. I was born here, and haven't ever moved. I love it here.
And how do you find Scotland as far as an adventure location? Does that work?
Yeah, Scotland's incredible. We're known for outdoors. You know, we've got hills, we've got the sea always nearby. There's lochs. There's pretty much everything that you need for an outdoor adventure. I live in, as you say, Glasgow, which is the biggest city in Scotland, but I'm only 20 minutes drive away from, or 40 minutes cycle away from some of the most beautiful scenery and, you know, hills and yeah, we're really lucky for outdoors in Scotland, and I feel like I really missed out on that for a long period of my life, but I'm making up for it now.
Well, let's go back to how this all kind of started. So you grew up in Glasgow, and Scotland is home, but at some point anxiety started becoming a major challenge in your life. How did that develop?
I think that I would love to say that there was just one point that anxiety, you know, just raised its head, and I remember it. But I've suffered with anxiety since I was maybe about 4 or 5 years old. So really, really young. I remember being more nervous about things than other kids. And I was always told, and I always told myself, that it was just part of my personality. You know, I was just a nervous person. I was a shy person. I was really bookish and academic and very introverted. So I grew up with that, and I grew up with that story about myself. You know, the way that you do, you have this story about yourself that you're always told. And I grew up knowing that that I was shy and that I was nervous. When I got to maybe my teenage years, so maybe about 13, 14, I was already on medication for anxiety. I had lots of twitches. So I do things like I blink a lot, and I would shake my head a lot. And you can imagine how well that that worked in high school. I got bullied really badly for being so anxious. And it just kind of built and built and built to the only things that I could really do when I got to my adult years was go to work and come back. And I started just cutting out absolutely everything else in life.
So how did it manifest itself? You mentioned social anxiety particularly. So was it a fear of people or a fear of ridicule, or how did it manifest in your life?
Yeah, I always say social anxiety is a fear of people, but it's not that you're not frightened of people, jumping out from behind the next corner with an axe or anything. You don't ever fear for your life. You fear for it's people's judgment and what people think of you, and that's a really natural response. We are really social beings, and we want to fit in, and it's really normal. So please don't think you have social anxiety if you worry about what people think a little. But for me, it became that I worried so much about people's judgment that I just stopped trying. I stopped putting myself in situations that I could potentially fail or that I might be laughed at. So, but that became everything. So I could no longer eat in public. So I couldn't go for family dinners or anything like that. I couldn't answer the telephone. Even answering my front door became really, really difficult. So I got to about 30 and I had tried pretty much everything else that I could to overcome this, and it just became that I needed to do something for myself.
Well, I want to dive into the details of that in just a second, but you brought something up that I want to address. For the listeners out there especially, you mentioned how the kids in high school were hard on you because of the anxiety that they saw. And it just made the problem worse.
Of course.
And I realized a while back, I call it naming. And I don't mean calling people names, although that causes issues, right? But naming is when we adopt something to be real about ourselves.
Yeah.
And, our parents give us our given names, right? And sometimes that name it reflects our personality and who we think we are, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's not even really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when people are growing up and someone says, "Well, you're just lazy. Would you help out some more?" You know what I mean? And
yeah,
especially
that sticks with you.
If it's someone that you respect, then that can become a little parasite in your psyche.
And it sticks with you, and it just never goes. So when I was 4 and I was shy, and that's quite cute when you're small and you're just a little thing, and I would hide behind my family and my sister would speak for me and things, and that stuck with me. People always from that point onwards said, "Oh, she's the shy one." So my sister was the sociable one. She's very gregarious, very outgoing, very sporty, and I was always the shy one. And that I told myself that over and over and over again until by the time I was in my 20s, if you had asked me what kind of person I was, I wouldn't have said that I'm a kind person or that I'm good-hearted or anything. I would have told you that I was a nervous or an anxious person. It'd become what I thought was the biggest part of my personality, which is just so unhealthy.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's the message I wanted to get out, that all of us have been named by teachers, by parents, by siblings, by friends, and some of those names are wrong. They're inaccurate. We never should have adopted them as part of who we are. And it's about being who we are. I am. The you are's are what get us in trouble. We've got to start saying, I am. And then name not just what we see happening in our lives, but you can say things that you really want to be, and it's true. And the reason I say that is people feel like they're lying when they say something that they want to be and they're not sure that they are. They get this internal conflict, and I don't want to get too much psychobabble going, but I just want to get this message out. When you say I am and you name what you really want to be, there is a part of you that is that, or you wouldn't want to be it. And so it's legitimate. You can claim that you are that, and if you do that over and over again, you will become that, and then it'll be manifest in your life.
I absolutely agree, and I love that you've said that. I am a great believer that these days that we are not one thing. From day to day, I'm a horrible, moody, difficult to live with person, or I'm a good-natured, lovely, kind person. It's just how you act on it and how you respond to it and how you are day to day. Nowadays, I'm not anxious. I struggle with anxiety still, but nowadays I am Paula, who is a person in her own right and who is bigger than all these tiny little parts of her personality or conditions that she's dealing with. And I think that's the only way that we can kind of move forward, is by telling ourselves that, I'm day to day, I'm just Paula, and I'm just trying to get through life the best I can, just the same as everybody else.
Absolutely. And I've got to say this, Paula, I love it. we're the Adventure Sports Podcast. We have a lot of people that listen to the show because they go out and do amazing feats, and we have some of the greatest people on the show, but I don't care how tough, how big, how secure, how amazing somebody is, they still have their own challenges too. And this is for everybody out there. So, listeners, I don't care how tough you might think you are, you know that part of you that's eating at you that you would like to overcome. Well, you can do that. And Paula gave us a beautiful example of how to overcome some serious challenges through adventure. So, okay, Paula, you said you were around 30 and you said, I just can't do this anymore. You decided to grab the bull by the horns and just explain to us exactly how that worked for you.
Yeah, as I say, I got to 30, and you know that way when you're young and you think that there's something else I should be doing. You know, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to help people, and I just wasn't doing that. And I thought, this isn't the life that I should be leading. I was at that point. I was working, and I was married, but that was all. I wasn't doing anything else. I would come home at the end of the day, and that would be it. I would shut the door, breathe a sigh of relief, and that would be it. And I had tried everything external to myself to beat the anxiety. You know, I'd gone to everyone that I thought could help. I'd been on medication for a long time. I'd had counselling and therapy and hypnotherapy, and I think I'd have, gone for an exorcism if my mother had allowed me. I'd tried everything, and it just became that there was only me left to try. There was no one else that could really do it for me. So before something really drastic happened, because that was the next step, it would probably have been hospitalisation or me doing myself some real drastic damage with the amount of medication that I was taking just to get through a day. Something had to give. So I thought that if somebody was going to make a decision about my mental health and about my future, then it should be me. So I gave myself one last chance to kind of frighten myself out of the anxiety, which sounds really stupid. But I became Paula Must Try Harder. That's my blog. Jerry, my husband, set up a blog for me called Paula Must Try Harder. And I started to challenge myself to big, scary things, to kind of try and put the fear into context and maybe prove to myself that I was bigger than the anxiety.
And you've done that through a series of what would you say, a series of programs? Maybe program's not the right word, but it started out with 17 sports, and then doing jobs that children want, and then an adventure per week. And so from that grew this huge collection of adventures and blogs and YouTube videos. And by the way, listeners, go to paulamustTryharder.co.uk and you can see this, what I'm talking about. But Paula now has shared these experiences so that you can see what she did. So Paula, explain how all that worked.
So I started off really, really small. For most of your listeners who are very outdoorsy and very active, they probably won't understand what I did with the first challenge. My first challenge was to try the 17 Commonwealth sports. So we have the Commonwealth Games, and like the Olympics, it travels around. So it was coming to Glasgow. It was coming to my hometown, and there was 17 sports involved, and I hadn't tried any of them, because sports to me were really frightening. They were really performative, and people watched you doing them, and there was so much chance to make a mistake or to be the rubbish one, and I would never get picked for teams or at sports day, so I just avoided them. So I thought, let's try all 17 of these sports from scratch and just see if it helps with my physical health, with my mental health, and just with how I felt about myself, and just to kind of reconnect with the world, I suppose. So I started off learning to ride a bike. What age did you learn to ride a bike at, Kurt?
I think I was 3 or 4.
I was 31.
Wow.
So,
31.
So I'd never had an interest in having a bike. My sister could ride a bike, but I just didn't fancy it. It was too scary. So I started off with that, and then I moved on to different sports, and by the end up I was training in judo with Olympic athletes and playing rugby with the Scottish rugby squad, and playing squash with the Commonwealth team. So it just took off because there was such a buzz around the city and around the country at that time about this big event that people just got involved because I was so rubbish. I was so bad at all the sports. And it just gave people a reason to, or an excuse, I suppose, to go out and just be rubbish at sports as well. Because I'm a big, I really believe in that you don't have to be good at things to go out and try them. In fact, you should do the things that you're worst at because it's where you have most to develop. So that's kind of where it started, and that's where it took off for me. And now this is what I do day to day now. I'm an adventurer by trade, I suppose, these days, which is incredible.
Yeah, that is so cool. Let's unpack this just as an example. You started by riding a bike. Yeah. And you're 31, so you have fresh memories of it. I barely remember learning to ride a bike, but you can tell us what it was like. But what were you nervous about when you first tried? Who did you have help you? And what was the impact that very first day?
Well, you say the very first day, but it actually took me almost 3 months to learn to ride a bike. And I know that probably sounds quite funny. But for the first 3 weeks, I couldn't go into the centre and ask for lessons because that was my first challenge. I thought I'll start with cycling because it's a solo sport and I won't have to talk to people. So I bought a bike and I went out in my back garden and I just couldn't do it. It wasn't there. I didn't have those skills. So I knew that I had to go and ask somebody for help. But for me, that was terrifying because it was bringing up all that social anxiety. So every day after work, I would go and I would sit outside the centre and I would come home and I would lie and say, oh, it was closed today, or, oh, they couldn't help me today. And just lie. And I knew that I was lying, and my husband knew that I was lying. But eventually one weekend he said, if you're going to start this, Paula, you really need to start it. So he came with me and I wouldn't let him come. I let him come into the centre with me, but I wouldn't let him come out to take photos for the blog. So he had to hide in bushes to take photos of me, God bless him, so that I had a record. And yes, of course they didn't laugh at me. They had adults learning to cycle all the time. This is, to me, I was the only person in the world that this was the problem for. But no, they had loads of people there and they taught me, and it took a long time. And I still fall off my bike, but it was the first day that it all went in the right order, that the pedals started going and I had my hands on the handlebars and I was travelling under my own speed. It was one of the most incredible moments of my life. And I think I probably did shed a tear or two because it was the first time that I'd challenged myself to something that I did not know what the outcome would be. I'd always stuck to things that I knew that I could do, like going to university and things, because I knew that I could study and that would be fine. But cycling was one of those things that I didn't know if it would ever go right, but I stuck with it. And the pride that I felt, I can still feel it welling up in me just now. I don't know if you can hear it, but the pride that I felt at that point was so much bigger than the anxiety, and it really bolstered me to keep going.
So when you conquered it, you overcame all the challenges and the fears, and it's not just learning to ride a bicycle. It was the challenge of actually interacting with people who are going to help you learn to ride a bicycle. It was, it was all of that. You finished that first thing, and you said, "I can ride a bike. I've done it." Mm-hmm. And so then, was it like, okay, this is working. I'm free. I'm not going to stop now, or was it still difficult?
It was. That whole challenge, the doing the sports, was 2 years, and it was 2 years of me crying pretty much every single day. There's lots of lovely photos of me, trying netball for the first time with a big smile on my face, and learning to play hockey, and they look really, really happy. But there were days that I could not get out of my bed. I was really, really struggling because it wasn't just learning something new all the time. It was learning to do it in spite of the fear. And fear has such control over us, and it takes a long time to break through that, especially if you've been living with it for such a long time and you've convinced yourself that it's part of you and that you have to take it everywhere that you go. So there were days, there were really, really low points. And at the start of the challenge, when on my blog, I was just writing about trying sports as a clumsy adult. And I hadn't really admitted that I had this anxiety and these mental health issues that were bearing down on me. But the first time that I admitted that, and it was after a terrible session of badminton in which I'd had a panic attack and cried. And I got Jerry to take a photo of me just in an absolute mess, and I put it on the blog, and it got the biggest response that I had ever had, because people had finally realised that I wasn't just doing this to be funny, that I was doing it because I needed it, because I needed to break this mental health problem, and I was doing it for a really good reason, and people just got behind it. And that for me was incredible. It was such a turnaround, because I was scared of people. I didn't think that people would accept me. And then here was these people that I didn't know getting in touch with me to say, keep going, you can do this. And once that happens, you can't really give up, because other people are then, depending on you to keep going and to keep them going. So yeah, it was a long haul, and I still deal with anxiety now. It's not something that you ever walk away from, but doing those sports was the beginning of a completely new life for me.
By now, you certainly know who Bent Gate is. That's for a great reason. Bent Gate Mountaineering has been sponsoring the Adventure Sports Podcast almost from the beginning, and we really appreciate that. They've made it possible for all the great shows to continue coming your way. We want to say thanks by reminding you to go to them for your backcountry gear. If you live in Colorado, then just stop by their store in Golden. If not, go to bentgate.com. They have what you need, from the latest ultralight gear to the tried and true classics for climbing, hiking, and camping, like Arc'teryx, Hilleberg, Nemo, Western Mountaineering, and many more. Need advice? They have you covered there too. Their staff are passionate adventurers who can offer help from their own experiences. Bentgate also hosts lots of events and speakers. Check out their website to see the schedule and to see all of their products. Help take care of the Adventure Sports Podcast by getting your gear from Bentgate Mountaineering. So after the segment where you were learning all the new sports, which I find fascinating, I think it's just wonderful what you did.
Thank you.
But then you moved into the Jobs That Children Want program. So explain this one for us.
Yeah, I was in a lot of schools at that point. After the 2 years of doing the sports, and people really getting to know that what I was dealing with and the confidence issues and things, a lot of schools asked me to go in and just talk to their young people about how beneficial sports can be. So to try and encourage those young people that weren't very active to just give it a try. So they were always, all the kids were always, you know what they're like, they want to tell you about what they're going to do when they grow up. And they were telling me all these things, these amazing jobs. And I had always wanted to be a writer, but I'd never lost the dream of doing it. I'd never lost the desire for it. I'd lost the confidence. I'd lost that childish ambition that you can do anything, you know, when you're 5 and you feel like you can rule the world. And I'd let the world tell me that I couldn't do that, and that wouldn't be me. And I thought, why don't I try all these amazing jobs that young people want to do and just prove to them that there's no reason for them to stop dreaming. There's no reason to, just because you're from Glasgow has high levels of deprivation, particularly in the East End where I live. And I just thought, you know, let's raise the aspirations of children. Let's tell them that they can do anything that they want to do, because if this absolute fool with no skills can do these jobs, then surely they can.
Well, and you did write a book.
Yes.
I told you I was gonna make you talk about it. So the name of the book was, let's see, I have it written down here. The book is Between the Lines,
Uh-huh.
and it's on Amazon. Is that right?
It is, but I really don't want people to read it.
Well, tell them how you did it because it's so cool. How clever.
I started off with writer as dream job number one because I thought you can't be a hypocrite. You can't tell people that they can do their dream jobs without trying yours first. And I'd always made the excuse that I didn't have time to write a book. Oh, life's too busy. I don't have time. So what I did was I took a week off of everything. I took a week off work and I wrote a book from start to finish in a week. So it was 94 hours it took me, and a lot of cake and a lot of tea and caffeine. And I wouldn't spend your time reading it if I were you. Thank you for bringing it up. Please don't read it, Kurt. You'll lose all respect for me.
No, you know what? Here's the reason I bring it up is because it was a huge challenge for you, and people understand the parameters now. You told them you wrote a book in a week. Really? Can you do that? But I know that people are going to want to say, well, how did it turn out? I mean, no one expects that if you wrote a book in 94 hours, that it's going to be your best work, right?
I hope not. Yeah, it's really not. I've never read it back. I think my husband proofread it, and then we just put it out there because I didn't want to add to the time. I thought if I'm saying it's done in 94 hours, then it has to be done in 94 hours. So we just got it out there, and I do sometimes get emails from Amazon saying that people have bought it, and I feel really bad for for them.
You should just put a big note on Amazon that says, "Do not buy this book," and you'll probably sell 1,000 more copies.
It'll become a bestseller.
That's right. And it might, because people love to see something that's raw and real. How about that?
Well, it's definitely that.
Well, I have to ask, you were on TEDx Glasgow.
Yes, I was.
And it says on your website here that you were readying yourself for the scariest 5 minutes of your life. So how did that go?
It was absolutely incredible. It was one of the most surreal days of my life because I genuinely couldn't speak to one person at a time before. 5 years ago, there's no way I would have spoken to you. I would have maybe said hi in the passing, but that's it. I once went to a book group to try and challenge myself back in the day, and they asked me to say what I liked about a book, and I fainted. So I blacked out because I was so scared. So doing a TEDx talk to 800 people in a theatre in Glasgow should have been absolutely terrifying, and it was. I was really shaking and things, but once I got that first reaction out of the audience, that first tiny laugh, I thought these people are on board with me. They understand that I'm anxious, that I'm nervous, and that I'm standing up here just trying to make things better for other people, and they really got behind it and enjoyed the story, I think, which just really bolstered me. And honestly, I was as high as a kite for the rest of that week. I was so excited, but it was one of the most incredible experiences.
That's so cool. So cool. So you tried a lot of different dream jobs as an example to the kids. Dream your dream and go get it. So what sorts of things did you do?
So I was an opera singer for a day with Scottish Opera. I sing like a cat's choir. I'm a terrible singer, but I did that. I was a computer games designer. I was a pilot for a day. I was a vet, a farmer. I taught in a primary school here for a day. I was a rally driver, a police officer for a day, firefighter, paramedic, astronaut. I don't know if I mentioned that one.
Wow.
So it was pretty crazy, but just so inspiring to meet all these people that were doing these incredible jobs, and to then be able to take that back to schools and to young people and say, look, this is me doing this. There is no reason. I'm the same as you. There is no reason you can't do it. I just feel really blessed and privileged to be able to do that.
So if people want more information about how these adventures went, right, being something, the dream job for a day, how can they get more information about that?
PaulaMustTryHarder.co.uk is my website, and there's a blog section on there, and you can just trawl the archive. I promise you, if you don't like one, there'll be something that you like, because I've done so many ridiculous things. It'll at least make you laugh. I promise you that.
Oh, yeah. Really, really cool. I love what you've done here, and I love it that you're sharing it with the world because, overcoming these things for yourself. Well, that's very important, but you're actually overcoming these things for everybody now because people are getting so much encouragement from you through your blog and through events like being on the Adventure Sports Podcast. Thank you for that. That's cool.
Not at all. Thank you so much. It started off, and I always say this, it started off a really, really selfish thing. I was just trying to make a better life for myself and for my family who were really struggling and really suffering because of what I was going through. And it's become this thing that's so much bigger than myself. And now it sounds silly, but I'm really, really thankful for those tough 30 years of anxiety, because it's put me in a position now that I can empathise and share my experiences with people who are really struggling with it and maybe don't think there is a way out for them. So now I can say to them, I've been there. It's been 30 years of my life, but you can get through it, and I will help you get through it in any way that I can. And I feel really thankful for those difficult years because it's put me in this position now.
Well, and you do a fair amount of public speaking now in schools, different media presentations, not just TEDx, but keynote speaking, motivational speaking. Share a little bit of what your experience has been with that.
Yeah, that when you read that out, it doesn't sound like me.
It is now. It is now. I'm naming you just a little bit. You are a public speaker.
Wow. I do a lot of, as you say, motivational speaking and things, because people do love a good story. We are built for stories. We love people's stories. That's why we love film and books and things. And people do seem to really like the fact that it is a difficult story that they're hearing, but there's a light at the end of it. And I'm standing in front of them. And maybe I sound a bit nervous and I move around a lot because I've got a lot of nervous energy. But everyone in that audience will know someone who is struggling with mental health. And if I can go up there and say one thing that touches them, then it's worth that. It's worth those butterflies in my stomach and the the nausea before I go up. So now I do lots of charity speaking, and I'm on like the BBC radio and things a lot, just talking about anxiety and different aspects of it, and how you can get out there, and particularly in Scotland, get out, just go for a walk, clear your head, and how much difference even just that little thing can make.
So do you think this is one of your dream jobs as well?
It is now, I think, yeah. It's the kind of job that I've ended up in, and I don't know how I've ended up in it, but I'm really, really thankful for any opportunities that I get these days to just touch people and reach out to people.
Well, let's go to one of those dream jobs. If you can pick one, maybe two. Let's hear what it was like for you to go out and be a pilot for a day, for example.
I'm so glad you picked pilot, because that was one of the best days.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I went down to England. I don't know if you know of the Red Arrows. They're the Royal Air Force's display team.
Well, I saw pictures on your site. I can say that much.
Yeah. So I went to visit a team called the Blades, and they're all aerobatic pilots. So they've all been in the Royal Air Force, and now they do all the display shows and the air shows and things like that. So they kindly allowed me to go up in one of these high-performance aerobatic planes, and we did some loops and we did some barrel rolls, and at one point we flew straight up into the air, cut the engine, and fell back down, twisting into the smoke. It was just one of the most exhilarating things that I've ever experienced. And then the pilot kindly gave me control and let me fly loops. So we were going upside down and I was flying it. So it was just, to be given that responsibility was a bit scary, but it was just incredible. And the whole time I was just smiling from ear to ear. I think my face was sore for the rest of the week.
I want to rewind. You're the same person that took 3 months to get the courage to ride a bicycle? Is that right?
That's me. Yeah,
and then in a day, you're flying upside down in an airplane?
Yeah, you see, this is why I really struggle sometimes to remember that this is my life now. I sometimes call old Paula, because it doesn't really feel like there's a join between old Paula and new Paula these days. I have to sometimes sit down and remind myself that that's the case.
Wow. Well, doing adventurous things and even just trying a new job, trying to write a book in a week, that's very adventurous, right? But it sounds
Yeah.
like this totally changed your life.
It completely. I say this, and it sounds really glib or maybe like a cliche, but adventure saved my life. I do not think that I certainly wouldn't be sitting here speaking to you, but I don't even think that I would be sitting here today if I hadn't learned to cycle. That small act, that small thing that, people take for granted that they can do, and people learn as a kid to do, that saved me. That made my life something that was worth living. And I don't think that you can overestimate that. I think that's underestimated. Sorry, I don't. That's, for me, that was just. It was the smallest change that made the biggest difference, and I'm just so thankful for it.
There's someone listening right now, Paula, who they're saying to themselves, himself, herself. They're saying, "Well, I'm glad that worked out for her. There's no way for me. I don't think, I don't know how she did that. That's not, what's going to happen for me." What do you say to that person?
I say that I would absolutely never suggest that, throwing yourself out a plane is the first response to anxiety. I would never say that. I had a long road of going down the medical route and therapy and counselling, and those things stabilised me. Those things got me through a lot of really difficult times, and I would always say that's your first port of call. Go and see someone, and the biggest thing is talk about it. We can't cure any of the biggest illnesses in the world by talking about them, but we can make a huge dent in anxiety by just talking about it. And we don't. We are so desperate to show that we're strong and that we can cope and that there's no chink in our armor, that we're tough. And there are so many of us that are struggling with anxiety. The only reaction that I've ever had since I've started speaking about anxiety is, how can I help you? Or me too. Because so many people that you know day to day, people that you think are the most confident, the most well together, successful people that you know, will be dealing with something. They will be dealing with nerves or anxiety or depression or something, or they know someone who is. No one looks at you as if you are weak if you talk about anxiety. So what I would say is, before you start taking up all the sports, or just talk to someone that you trust about it, and I promise you that that will make such a difference. And if you don't have anyone, talk to me, because I am so happy that I get emails every day now, from people saying, "I love what you've done. I don't know how it translates to my life. Can you give me some tips?" And I'm more than happy to open up a dialogue with anybody that's struggling, because if that makes a difference, then everything that I've done has been worth it.
I'm not afraid to share, Paula, that as you were saying that, I had some memories of my own when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I had anxiety as well. And I remember one day my mom wanted me to just put gas in the car. I was too terrified. I did it, but I was shaking. I was terrified to put gas or petrol, right, in the car.
Yeah, petrol.
And so it sounds ridiculous because that's something we do every day, right? But for me, that was such a challenge for similar reasons that you've already described. I was too anxious to go into the back of the house alone.
Yeah.
My own house.
It sounds crazy, but it happens to so many people.
I think
it's a condition
really
that so many people are dealing with, and it is really common. And I think that the sooner that we understand that, and the sooner that we just give each other a little bit of a hand up, the better that we'll all be.
Well, and I have to share this last part too. My sister's name is also Paula, and she was very outgoing and gregarious and just a delightful person. And she was a couple of years older than I was. and she showed me that you really could reach out and do things. And so during the time that I was so anxious I couldn't even put gas in the car, she was running for student council president. She was drum major leading the band. She was, out there doing these things.
Wow.
And the way that I overcame all of that was to follow in her footsteps. So I became class president. I became the drum major that led the band. And
Wow.
and it worked. It's kind of like what you were doing, as you were trying all the different things that were scary to you. Well, I did the same thing. I never even thought of that before the interview, but we have kind of that in common, right?
Yeah.
And it
amazing.
works. It absolutely
It
works.
does. I think it just gives you the ability to put fear into context and put fear into its place. Fear is really natural. It's a really human response, and we all have it. And it's good for us. But I had no perspective over what should be scary and what shouldn't, because I'd never taken manageable risks when I was young. So I'd never let myself go out and fall off a bike and realise that that's okay, because nothing bad's going to happen. So I didn't have any context for fear. So the telephone ringing was as scary for me as, being chased by a lion. I just didn't know what I should be frightened of and what I shouldn't anymore. And once you give yourself that context back, once you try those things that scare you, but deep inside that aren't really putting you at that much risk, such as cycling, you give yourself that context back and you take control back over the fear and put it back in its place. And then it has to live with you rather than you living with it.
Yeah.
The 180 Flame is the ideal alternative to bulky and fragile gas-burning camp stoves. The 180 Flame utilizes fewer parts with minimal weight and maximized reliability. The locking tab and slot design means there are no hinges, welds, or rivets to fail you in the field. Cook your food and boil water quickly using only small amounts of natural fuels including twigs, grass, pine cones, and leaves. Weighing just 6.4 ounces, the 180 Flame is the ideal alternative to a backpacking stove. You can find your new flame at 180tac.com or a retailer near you. 180 Flame. Think big, pack small.
So then your next step, we have to move on to the Adventure Week program, right? So tell us about that.
So for about, it was meant to be a year, but it ended up about 18 months. Every single week, I took on a new adventure, a new skill, learned a new, went to a new club, or just tried something a bit different. And at the time, I was writing a column for a national paper in Scotland. So I wrote about the adventures and tried to get other people to try them as well. So that was a really cool job for a while that I did. And it just, I got to try some of the coolest things that I've ever tried over that year and a half.
Well, let's hear some of them. Give us a handful. There's so many. So run down the list.
So I tried things like flying trapeze. I tried roller skating. I tried gliding and paragliding. I tried land yachting. I tried kayaking and horse vaulting. So doing gymnastics on the back of a moving horse.
Wow.
Yeah, which was one of the strangest things that I've ever done. I'd never met a horse before then, so to get on its back and do some gymnastics was a bit strange. I did abseiling, bungee jumping. I did pottery. I did electric mountain biking. I climbed Ben Nevis, which is the highest peak in Britain. I did firewalking, beekeeping, indoor and outdoor skydiving. I was a life model for a day. So I went to an artist class and took my clothes off and let them draw me for a day.
So how does someone with fear of people do that?
honestly, that is something that I will never be recreating. Never in my life. I never say never, but I will not be doing that again. I was vomiting that morning. I was so sick
Oh,
to my stomach. It was 2.5 hours, I think, that I had to sit. And at the start, there's something called dynamic poses, so you have to look like you're doing something. So I was pretending that I was playing tennis and mowing the lawn and things, and just completely naked. It was the most awful, awful experience. And people around you in a circle. So someone's always getting the bad angle, basically. Someone, so there was all these, I think there was 200 sketches of me by the end of the day by complete strangers. And I did not like any of them. They were awful. And they were so proud of them. They were saying, come and see, come and see. And I just wanted to run screaming from the hall.
but here's the thing, and there's kind of a metaphor about this, isn't there? When we have anxiety, we hide. We hide from everybody. And what you've
Yeah.
done is you've said, there's nothing left to hide. It's all out there now.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was exactly that. And that was the first one in the year and a half of An Adventure a Week. Was life modelling was the first one, because I just thought, I will keep putting this one off unless I just do it. And that's what I do now. If I know that I'm frightened of something, I'll just go out and do it straight away. If there's a phone call that I don't want to make, I'll do it right now. Because if I give myself time for that fear response to kick in, then it will take over. But if I don't give it time and I just go and do it, then it's always less difficult than I think it's going to be.
Well, and I've seen so many people when they try bungee jumping, right?
Yeah.
The people that help with bungee jumping know this, so they try to get people to go right away. Don't stand up there and think about it. How was that for you?
It was an incredible rush. I've never been scared of heights, but I'm terrified of water. And I did it. It was in the Perthshire countryside, absolutely gorgeous scenery, and it was from the underside of a bridge over a river. So I was jumping basically towards something that really, really scared me, which was water. So yeah, I had to do it. They said, who wants to go first? And my hand shot up because I thought, just get that. Don't watch anyone else. Just get it done. And as you say, you just walk to the end. They say 3, 2, 1, and you just go. And that moment that you're just in free fall thinking, is this rope going to catch me? Is this going to kick in at any point? And then it just reaches the end and bounces you back up. And it was incredible. And once you've done it, you want to do it. You want to do it again and again and again.
Wow. So there are a lot of metaphors we can make out of that one too. But
My life is a metaphor.
What is that leap of faith like? Okay, I believe that someone engineered this correctly. Everything's going to work and we're going to go.
Yeah, you just have to hope, because there's different ropes for different sizes of people, different weights of people, so they weigh you a few times before you go up. And I'm thinking, I hope they've hooked me up to the right one, because if they've not, I could end up in the water, or I could end up bouncing right back up onto the bridge. So you just really have to put your trust in the systems that are in place and just go for it, because there's nothing else. Once you're attached to the, it's on your legs. That's you. You're done. You just need to go. And it was wonderful, as everything is once you've done it.
I think I would have to ask the people helping out how many single malts they had the night before. I would have to know before I jump.
That's too dangerous a question in Scotland. So you just don't ask. You don't ask. You don't want to know.
Oh, wow. It sounds so amazing. It really, really does. And you have a big event that's coming up. So Let's talk about the future now. You've done so much. I wish we could dive into everyone a lot more, but what are you planning?
So next April, I am planning to attempt to be the first person ever to have swam the entire way around the coast of mainland Britain.
And you're going to swim all the way around?
All the way around. I only learned to
mainland
swim 3
Britain.
weeks ago.
Wow. Are you a swimmer?
I learned to swim 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Okay.
Yes.
So there's got to be a lot going on here. So I love this. People like to start a new sport, and they always don't know how to start and how to get from where they are to where they want to be. But I mean, you set a goal out there that's amazing. That's huge. I mean, you've heard of people trying to do the English Channel, and some have. It's tough, but you're going to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So talk about the process a little bit. What made you decide to take this on?
to put it into context a little, I've been trying to learn to swim for the last 5 years since the sports challenge, because swimming was one of the sports. I've been aquaphobic all my life, absolutely terrified of large bodies of water. I scalded myself with boiling hot water when I was about 18 months old. And while I don't remember it, it's manifested itself in this huge fear of open water and large bodies of water. So I couldn't walk over a bridge. I couldn't go near any of our beautiful Scottish lochs. I couldn't really even go near very big puddles and things. I was terrified of water. So this has been quite a long process to get me to the point that, as I say, 3 weeks ago, I finally put the breathing into my stroke, and now I can actually call myself a swimmer. But it's the last big remaining fear that I have. I've never swum in the sea. I will go into the sea before the challenge. Please don't worry. But it just, when it came to me, this idea of swimming around Britain, and I looked into it and saw that no one had ever even attempted it. To me, that's just, that's a red rag to a bull. If no one's attempted it, you have to go and try, don't you? So, and it was one of those things that, and you've probably heard this from loads of, your adventurers that you've spoken to. Once an idea comes to you and it won't leave, you know that you have to do it. So right. I would wake up in the morning thinking about it. I would go to sleep at night thinking about it. And pretty much every hour in between, I was thinking about it. And it just stuck. And as soon as I spoke to Jerry about it and he said, okay, let's do it, I knew that this was the one. This was the one for me.
So when are you attempting this?
I'm starting next April, and I'm starting at Land's End, which is the most southwesterly point of Britain. So it's down in England. So I'm starting there because of the water temperature will be a lot warmer down in the south of England than it would be if I started up in Scotland. So and then I'm just going to chase the summer up and round Britain.
And it's still going to be cold in April, even at Land's End. It's going to be cold.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be about 10 degrees, the water. Ooh. So yeah, but I live in Scotland. I'm used to the cold. So yeah, I've been doing some open water swimming since over the last couple of weeks, and I'm getting used to it now. And I'm just going to keep swimming over the winter so that by the time April comes, I'll hopefully be acclimatized to it.
Right. So how long do you think it'll take to make your way?
It should hopefully take about 6 months, and that's swimming in every single tide that I possibly can swim in. Obviously, there'll be some tides that you don't swim against the tide. There's a metaphor there. So there'll be tides that I'll have to wait out. So hopefully it'll be 5 hours swimming, and then a break of maybe about 7 hours waiting out the tide, and then another 5 hours swimming. So it's basically just going to be sleeping and swimming on shifts for 6 months.
Oh.
So
so you're going to try to do this every day for 6 months?
Yeah. Obviously, I live in Britain. The weather is not predictable in any way. So there will be bad weather days where it just won't be safe to go out. And I'm taking a lot of risk. Obviously, it's a risky challenge, but I'm going to mitigate all the risk that I possibly can. And I wouldn't go out on days when I'm advised not to. So there will be days when I just won't be able to. So I'll take those as rest days and food calorie intake days, and every other day that I can possibly swim, I will be.
And are you using a follow boat, someone to be there if things go wrong?
Yes, there'll definitely be a support boat and possibly a kayaker alongside me. I've had lots of lovely kayakers get in touch to say that they would love to do the journey with me. So there might be a bit of a kayak relay going around Britain for 6 months next year, just of them keeping me safe, but also feeding and watering me as we go along. So I've had lots of people reaching out, which is great.
That's really, really fun. Forrest Gump, the movie. You remember when he decides to run, and he just keeps running, and the next thing you know, there's a huge crowd running with him. I think this could happen.
I hope so. I really hope so. It's lovely because open water swimming has become so popular now, and in Scotland there's loads of clubs, in England as well, in Wales there's loads of clubs that do open water swimming, and most of them have got in touch to say, we will keep track of where you're going to be, and we'll send all our swimmers out and they'll do a couple of miles with you. And I think that will really keep me going, just meeting the new people and knowing that there's people out there that are supporting me. That'll that'll make the 6 months seem hopefully a little bit shorter.
How amazing. And you have a Kickstarter campaign.
Yes, the challenge is called the Big Mad Swim Around Britain because it's for mental health. It's to raise awareness of living adventurous and active and healthy, engaged lives with anxiety and mental health challenges. So that it's called the Big Mad Swim Around Britain, and there's a Kickstarter for the documentary film of the 6 month trip. So it won't just be me swimming all the time. There will be other things shown. There'll be lovely scenery and things. It won't just be, focused on just my swim. There'll be lots of other things in it.
So a documentary, and you said Big Mud, is that right?
Mad, M-A-D, as in crazy.
M-A-D. I'm sorry. So the call cut out just a little bit. When you said it two times, it cut out both times for me anyway. The Big Mad. So that's what people would search for on Kickstarter to find your campaign.
Yes, the Big Mad Swim Around Britain. Or just search for my name and Swim Around Britain because no one else has done it, so they should find me.
Paula McGuire. This is such a fun thing. So when does the Kickstarter campaign start?
It has already started, so and it will run for about 60 days. So you have time, and there's lots of really cool rewards. Things like getting a postcard from me all the way around Britain, or having had a pair of my sweaty goggles when I come back, or me visiting you and giving a talk about anxiety and adventure. So hopefully people will get behind it because the cause, I hope, is a good one, and if one person sees me doing this and thinks, yeah, I'm going to take up running again, or I'm going to go out swimming again, then yeah, it's totally worth the 6 months of hardship.
Wow. What kind of challenges, besides just making the distance, what kind of challenges do you anticipate for this swim?
I think that the cold water will obviously be a big one. As I say, I'm Scottish, so we're used to the cold, but prolonged periods of the cold will be really, really difficult. Also, I'll have to be taking in about 8,000 calories a day. Now, normally that wouldn't bother me. I'm quite happy to eat, but it will be difficult to take in that amount of calories around swimming. So that will be quite difficult. And I think mostly it will be, I truly believe that you can train yourself to do pretty much anything. I know that you have lots of incredible endurance athletes on your show, and I think, how did you do that? That's amazing. But you can train your body to do things. I think it will be the mental side of things that will be difficult. Hopefully I've put myself in a really good position now that I can cope with it, that I can talk myself around from panic, and I know my triggers, and I know when I need to step back from things, and so that might be a challenge, being in my own head for that length of time. But I think I'm in a good place to deal with that. And I'm told that no one has ever been bitten by a shark or eaten by a shark off the coast of Britain. So that could be a record that I go for.
Yeah, let's not achieve that one, okay?
But it will be. If I manage, when I manage all the way round, I'll be the first person ever to have done it. And one adventurer, Sean Conway, who's an incredible adventurer, he swam Land's End to John O'Groats, so that's one coast of Britain. He did that in 2013, and he's been a great supporter of my challenge. He's been on the phone telling me lots of things to watch out for, and has been great. So, but I will be the first woman to have swam that section as well. So there's a few records that I'm hopefully going to be going for. Right
on. That is really, really fun. Well, we need to have you back on afterwards so that you can tell us how it went. That would be so fun.
I would love that so much. I'm sure that I will have lots of stories. Hopefully most of them will be good stories to tell you when I get back.
Right. Well, a lot of people think of swimming as, what they do in the pool or maybe in the lake. But when you're out in the ocean like that with the currents and the tides and all sorts of manners of weather and waves, and it's going to be very interesting. You're going to have a lot of different experiences.
Yeah, and I am, as I say, I'm mitigating all the risks that I possibly can. I will have a support team, and I have a fantastic swimming director, if you like, up here, Robert, who deals with all the open water swimming events in Scotland. So he runs a company here called Vigor Events, and they do all the loch swimming and the outdoor swims that happen, and most of the ones that happen in Scotland. So he's great. He's been in swimming for about 30 years, and he has all that information that I just don't know. So so he's a great support for me, and has told me lots of things that I need to watch out for, and he'll be with me for the journey as well. So I'm really lucky that so many people are getting involved and sending me advice and things, and I'm willing to take the advice of anyone that is willing to help.
Wow. Well, we've run out of time, Paula. I would love to hear more. The clock got us, but you know what? Let's one more time tell people how they can learn more. If they go to paulamustTryHarder.co.uk or just Google Paula Must Try Harder, it'll pop up.
Yeah, there's only one of them. Or I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at P Must Try Harder. And the Kickstarter will be the Big Mad Swim Around Britain, if you look for that. And I'd love your support. Thank you.
Big Mad Swim Around Britain.
That's it.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, you know, I have to say a heartfelt thank you for what you did today. I think that what you shared with us is going to help so many people. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't care how tough you are and how much you like to pretend that you have it all together. This show has something for you. Everybody has challenges to overcome. And I love the way that you have used adventurous events, adventure sports, and things like that to overcome your challenge, your special challenges with anxiety. And it's a real example for the rest of us. Thank you for stepping out and doing that. You didn't have to do that, you know, but you did. And it's changing lives. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so kind of you to say. I'm just really feel really fortunate to be able to speak about it. And it's lovely of you to give me the platform to hopefully speak to people about, as you say, overcoming challenges.
Oh, sure. It's our pleasure. Absolutely our pleasure. And thank you so much for being on the Adventure Sports Podcast today. And for all the listeners out there, wow. You know, I always say get out there and have some fun. But can you imagine getting out there and changing your life by trying fun things and then sharing it with others and making an impact on the world? You know? That might be what it's all about. So get out there, have some fun.
On Monday's episode, Brian Snyder is back to talk about his third book in his Off the Map trilogy, as well as his latest adventures. So stay tuned, and until then, get out and have some fun.